The icy waters of the Sweetwater River clawed at Zara Reynolds' skin, drawing her consciousness back from the brink of darkness as she clung desperately to a jutting rock. Blood trickled from the gunshot wound in her shoulder, painting crimson streaks down her torn dress. They had taken everything: her money, her dignity, her hope, before dragging her to this remote Wyoming riverbank and leaving her for dead with a bullet in her flesh, and the roaring current threatening to swallow her whole. Wyoming Territory, 1872. A land of promise and peril in equal measure. Zara's fingers slipped on the slick stone as another wave of pain racked her body. The men who'd ambushed her stagecoach were long gone, along with her fellow passengers all dead, their bodies left scattered along the trail like discarded dolls. Only she had survived the initial attack, only to be used, beaten, and finally dumped here when they believed she'd seen too much. "Help," she croaked, her voice barely audible above the rushing water. "Please, someone." The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as her strength ebbed. She'd been clinging to the rock for what felt like hours, afraid to let go but knowing she couldn't hold on much longer. Darkness crept into the edges of her vision, tempting her with the sweet release of unconsciousness. That's when she heard the steady rhythm of hoofbeats approaching the riverbank. Quincy Ryder pulled his chestnut mare to a stop at the edge of the Sweetwater, scanning the surroundings with narrowed eyes. He'd been tracking a herd of wild mustangs for the better part of 2 days, following them to this watering spot. But something else had caught his attention: a splash of color against the river's edge that didn't belong. A woman, half submerged in the water, clinging weakly to a rock. "Christ Almighty," he muttered, swinging down from his saddle. Without hesitation, he waded into the frigid current, his boots slipping on the smooth river stones as he fought his way toward her. "Hold on," he called out. "I'm coming." Zara's head lifted slightly at the sound of his voice, revealing a face streaked with dirt and blood, but with eyes that still held a flicker of life. Those eyes locked onto Quincy's approaching figure, tall and broad-shouldered, his weather-beaten face partially obscured by a few days' growth of beard beneath the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat. "Don't you let go now," he urged as he reached her, his strong arms wrapping around her waist. "I've got you." She felt herself being lifted, the pressure against her wounded shoulder sending fresh waves of agony through her body. A scream tore from her throat before she could stop it. "You're hurt," he observed, his voice tight with concern as he carried her to shore. "Who did this to you?" But Zara couldn't answer. The relief of rescue had broken the last of her resolve, and she surrendered to the darkness that had been threatening to claim her. Her body went limp in his arms. Quincy laid her gently on the riverbank, quickly assessing her injuries. The gunshot wound in her shoulder was still bleeding, though not as heavily as it might have. Her dress was torn in ways that told a story that made his jaw clench with anger. Bruises marked her wrists and throat. Whoever had done this had meant for her to die slowly. "Not today," he murmured, shrugging out of his coat and wrapping it around her. "Not if I have anything to say about it." He lifted her carefully onto his horse, then mounted behind her, cradling her against his chest to keep her from falling. His cabin was a good 3 hours' ride, but he knew of a lined shack about an hour away where he could tend to her wounds. As he urged his horse into a careful trot, he looked down at the woman in his arms. She couldn't be more than 25, with dark hair plastered to her pale face. Something fierce and protective stirred in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. "You're going to be all right," he told her unconscious form. "I promise you that." The lined shack was just as Quincy remembered it, a simple one-room structure with a small stove. A narrow cot and basic supplies kept stocked for cowboys working the range. He'd used it himself many times during the 5 years he'd been working as a ranch hand and sometimes mustanger in the territory. He laid Zara on the cot and got to work, first building a fire in the stove, then heating water to clean her wound. He found bandages and a bottle of whiskey among the supplies, grateful for the foresight of whoever had stocked the place last. The bullet had gone clean through her shoulder, which was both blessing and curse. No need to dig it out, but 2 wounds to contend with instead of 1. He cleaned both entry and exit wounds carefully, wincing at each unconscious moan that escaped her lips. As he worked, he spoke softly to her, more to comfort himself than anything else. "Name's Quincy Ryder. Most folks call me Quinn." Been working for the Circle M Ranch about 20 miles east of here for a few years now. Got my own little cabin on the property. Not much, but it's home." He carefully bandaged her shoulder, then moved on to the smaller cuts and bruises that marked her body. Each one stoked the anger building inside him. "Whoever did this to you?" He started, then shook his head. "Well, let's just say they'd best hope I never cross their path." Night had fallen by the time he finished tending to her. He stoked the fire in the stove, made a pallet for himself on the floor, and settled in to wait. He wasn't a praying man, but that night he found himself asking whatever higher power might be listening to let this woman live. The fever hit sometime in the early morning hours. Zara thrashed on the cot, delirious with pain and infection. Quincy bathed her forehead with cool water from the canteen, holding her down when necessary to keep her from reopening her wounds. "No, please, no more," she murmured, fighting invisible attackers. "I won't tell, I swear I won't tell." "You're safe now," Quinn told her over and over. "No one's going to hurt you, you're safe." Somewhere in her fever dream, Zara heard him, a steady voice cutting through the nightmare, anchoring her to reality. When her eyes finally fluttered open, the first rays of dawn were filtering through the cabin's single window, and a stranger with kind eyes was sitting beside her. "Water," she whispered, her throat raw. He helped her sit up slightly, supporting her as she sipped from a tin cup. His hands were calloused but gentle, his touch careful as if she might break. "You've been out for nearly a day," he told her. "Had me worried for a while there." Zara studied him properly for the first time. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30 or so, with lines around his eyes that spoke of long days under the western sun. His hair was dark brown, in need of a trim, and his eyes were a striking shade of green that reminded her of summer grass. "You saved me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Found you in the river, couldn't very well leave you there." "Others might have." A muscle twitched in his jaw. "I'm not others." She nodded slowly, wincing at the pain in her shoulder. "I'm Zara Reynolds, Quincy Ryder." "Quinn to most folks." He set the cup aside. "Think you can eat something? Got some beans I can heat up." She nodded, suddenly aware of the hollow feeling in her stomach. As he moved to the stove, she took in her surroundings: the simple cabin, her bandaged shoulder, the coat he'd draped over her for extra warmth. "Where are we?" she asked. "Line shack about 15 miles west of Rawlins." He stirred the pot of beans. "My cabin's another couple hours' ride from here, but you weren't in any condition to travel that far yesterday." "Rawlins," she repeated, her mind working through the geography. "I was on the stagecoach heading there. We were attacked. 3 men. They killed everyone else." Quinn's hand stilled on the spoon. "And they shot you and left you in the river." "After they." She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. The understanding in his eyes told her he'd already guessed what they'd done to her. "I'm sorry," he said simply, and somehow those 2 words, spoken with such genuine regret, were exactly what she needed. "They were looking for something," she continued, needing to get the story out. "They kept asking about a package, but I didn't know anything. I was just traveling to Rawlins to take up a position as a schoolteacher." Quinn brought her a plate of beans, helping her sit up more fully to eat. "Schoolteacher, huh? Rawlins has been wanting one for a while now." She nodded, taking a small bite. "I came from Chicago. My parents died last winter and there wasn't anything left for me there." "And now?" he asked quietly. Zara looked down at her bandaged shoulder, at the torn remnants of her dress. "Everything she owned had been in her trunk on that stagecoach. Now I have nothing." "You have your life," Quinn said firmly, "and that's a damn sight more than those bastards intended to leave you with." She met his gaze, seeing the determination there. "Yes," she agreed after a moment, "I suppose I do." Later that day, when she was stronger, Quinn helped her outside to sit in the sunshine while he tended to his horse. He'd given her one of his spare shirts to wear, the fabric swimming on her smaller frame but far more practical than her ruined dress. "How long have you been in Wyoming Territory?" she asked, watching as he brushed down the chestnut mare. "Going on 5 years now," he replied. "Came west after the war, didn't have much to go back to in Tennessee." "You fought for the Confederacy." There was no judgment in her tone, just curiosity. He nodded once. "Not by choice. Family land was in Tennessee. When the war came, I did what was expected." He paused in his brushing. "Lost everything anyway. Farm, family, faith in just about everything I thought I knew." "I'm sorry," Quinn shrugged. It was a lifetime ago, found my way out here, started working with horses. Turns out I have a knack for it. Been breaking Mustangs for the Circle M Ranch for the last few years. Got my own little piece of land now, courtesy of the owner who took a liking to me. That sounds like a good life, Zara said softly. Lonely sometimes, he admitted, but peaceful. After the war, peaceful was all I wanted. They fell silent for a while, the only sounds the rhythmic strokes of the brush and the wind rustling through the sparse trees surrounding the lined shack. We should head for my cabin tomorrow, Quinn said eventually. It's more comfortable than this place, and you'll be able to rest better there. Once you're stronger, we can figure out what to do about getting you to Rawlins, if that's still where you want to go. Zara nodded, though the thought of Rawlins now filled her with unease. The men who'd attacked the stagecoach could still be in the area, and without her belongings or proof of her appointment, would the town council even believe she was the teacher they'd hired? I don't know what I want anymore, she confessed. Everything I planned, it all feels impossible now. Quinn stopped brushing the horse and came to sit beside her on the rough-hewn bench. Nothing's impossible out here, that's one thing I've learned. The West breaks you down, sure enough, but then it gives you the chance to rebuild yourself however you want. Is that what you did? His eyes met hers, steady and honest. Still doing it, I reckon. The journey to Quinn's cabin the next day was slow but steady. He'd fashioned a more comfortable seat for Zara on his horse, positioning her in front of him where he could keep her secure with one arm while he guided the mare with the other. Despite her protests that she could manage on her own, he insisted on the arrangement. That shoulder needs time to heal, he told her firmly. No sense reopening it because you're too stubborn to accept help. She'd laughed at that, her first real laugh since the attack, and the sound had done something peculiar to Quinn's insides, something warm and unsettling all at once. His cabin came into view in the early afternoon, a sturdy structure nestled against a backdrop of pines, with a small corral to one side and a creek running nearby. It wasn't grand by any means, but to Zara's eyes, it looked like a palace compared to the lined shack. It's lovely, she said sincerely as he helped her down from the horse. Quinn looked pleased. Built it myself, mostly. Added on last summer when I got tired of cramped quarters. Inside was simple but comfortable, a main room with a stone fireplace, a solid table with chairs, a well-used armchair, and shelves lined with more books than Zara would have expected. A doorway led to what appeared to be a bedroom, and a ladder against one wall suggested a loft above. You'll take the bedroom, Quinn said, guiding her to a chair. I'll sleep in the loft. I can't put you out of your bed. You're not putting me out of anything. I'm offering. His tone was gentle but brooked no argument. Now sit, I'll make us something to eat and then you should rest. Over the next few days, a routine developed. Quinn would rise early to tend to his horse and the few chickens he kept, then prepare breakfast. Zara would join him, insisting on helping despite his protests, taking on small tasks that wouldn't strain her healing shoulder. During the day, while Quinn worked around the property, Zara would rest, read from his collection of books, or sit outside watching him. They talked about his work with horses, her training as a teacher, books they'd both read, places they'd seen. In the evenings, they shared simple meals and more conversation before retiring to their separate sleeping quarters. On the fourth day, Quinn brought her a dress. Neighbor about 5 miles south has a wife about your size, he explained somewhat awkwardly, holding out the folded garment. Thought you might like something other than my shirt to wear. Touched by his thoughtfulness, Zara accepted the dress, a simple blue calico with small white flowers. Thank you, that was very kind. Mrs. Hollister also sent along some other necessities. He gestured to a small bundle, his ears reddening slightly. Said you're welcome to visit once you're feeling stronger. The dress fit well enough, and the feeling of being properly clothed again did wonders for Zara's spirits. When she emerged from the bedroom wearing it, Quinn looked up from the harness he was mending and went very still. Well, he said after a moment, clearing his throat, that's a sight better than my old shirt. Zara smoothed the fabric over her hips, suddenly self-conscious under his gaze. It's very comfortable. Please thank Mrs. Hollister for me. That evening, as they sat by the fire after supper, Zara finally asked the question that had been on her mind. Why haven't you taken me to town? Surely there's a doctor there who could look at my shoulder properly. Quinn set down his coffee cup. Thought about it, but town's a good day's ride, and that first day you weren't strong enough, then when the fever set in. He shrugged. Seemed safer to keep you here where I could watch over you. And now, his eyes met hers across the small space. Now I reckon it's up to you. You're healing well. If you want to go to Rollins, I'll take you. Or, he hesitated, or, she prompted. Or you could stay here a while longer, at least until you're fully healed. Give yourself time to decide what you want to do next. The offer hung in the air between them, weighted with implications neither was ready to voice. I'd like to stay, Zara said finally, if you're sure I'm not imposing. The smile that spread across his face was answer enough. As the days turned into weeks, Zara's strength returned. The gunshot wound healed, leaving a puckered scar that Quinn assured her was healing cleanly. She began taking on more responsibilities around the cabin, cooking meals, tending the small vegetable garden, even learning to feed and groom Quinn's horses. He had 3 now, including a half-broken Mustang he was training for the ranch. They settled into a companionable rhythm, their initial awkwardness giving way to an easy friendship that surprised them both. Quinn, who had lived alone for years, found himself looking forward to returning to the cabin each evening, knowing Zara would be there with a warm meal and conversation. Zara, who had always been independent but never truly alone until her parents' death, discovered a sense of peace in the simple routine of their days. Neither spoke about how long she might stay or what would happen when she was fully recovered. It was easier to exist in this suspended moment where the future remained unexamined, until the day Quinn rode in with news from town. Sheriffs put out word about the stagecoach robbery, he said as they sat down to dinner. 3 men held up the Rollins stage about a month back. Killed everyone aboard, or so they thought. Zara's hand trembled slightly as she set down her fork. Did they catch them? Quinn shook his head. Not yet, but there's a description now, and they know what they were after. He met her gaze. Gold shipment hidden among the regular mail. The driver had it in a secret compartment, but someone tipped the robbers off. I didn't know, Zara whispered. I swear I didn't know anything about any gold. Of course you didn't. Quinn reached across the table to cover her hand with his. But you survived. Which means you're the only witness who can identify them. The implication hung heavy in the air. If the robbers discovered she was alive. The sheriff's asking for any information, Quinn continued. I didn't say anything about you, figured that was your decision to make. Zara withdrew her hand from his, wrapping her arms around herself. If I go forward, they'll come after me. Not if they're caught first, and if they're not. She stood abruptly, pacing the small confines of the cabin. I was starting to feel safe here now. Quinn rose and moved to stand in front of her, halting her nervous pacing. His hands came to rest gently on her shoulders. I won't let anything happen to you. Whatever you decide to do, I'll be right beside you. She looked up at him, searching his face. Why would you risk yourself for me? Because he broke off, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. Because I care what happens to you, more than I should, probably. The admission hung between them, honest and unadorned. Zara felt something shift inside her, a recognition of feelings she'd been trying not to acknowledge. I care about you too, she whispered. Quinn's hands tightened slightly on her shoulders, then relaxed. One hand moved to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing lightly across her skin. Then trust me when I say I won't let them hurt you again. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he lowered his head. His lips met hers in a kiss so gentle it nearly broke her heart, a question rather than a demand, an offering of comfort and something more. When they parted, Zara's eyes remained closed for a moment, savoring the feeling. I'll go to the sheriff, she said at last. But not tomorrow. Give me one more day here just like this. One more day before everything changes again. Quinn nodded, pressing his forehead against hers. One more day, he agreed. That night, for the first time since her arrival, Zara didn't sleep in Quinn's bed alone. They lay together atop the covers, fully clothed, his arm around her waist and her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Nothing more happened between them. They were both too aware of her still healing body and the uncertainty of what lay ahead, but the simple act of sleeping beside one another felt more intimate than anything Zara had experienced before. Morning came too soon. They rose with the sun, sharing a quiet breakfast before preparing for the journey to town. Zara wore the blue calico dress, her hair neatly braided down her back. Quinn saddled 2 horses, his chestnut mare for himself and a gentle palomino for Zara. Mrs. Hollister's gelding, he explained when she questioned the second horse. Thought you might prefer to ride on your own today. The consideration touched her deeply. Thank you. The ride to Rawlins took most of the day, with frequent stops to allow Zara to rest. Quinn kept a wary eye on their surroundings, his rifle across his saddle and a revolver at his hip. By the time they reached the outskirts of town, the sun was beginning to set. We'll get a room at the hotel, Quinn said as they rode down the main street. Visit the sheriff in the morning. Zara nodded, suddenly nervous at the prospect of being around so many people after weeks of isolation. The town wasn't large, perhaps 30 buildings along the main thoroughfare, with smaller dwellings scattered beyond, but after the peaceful seclusion of Quinn's cabin, it felt overwhelming. The hotel clerk raised an eyebrow at their request for 2 rooms, his gaze moving from Quinn to Zara and back again with obvious curiosity. Quinn met the look with a steady stare of his own until the man dropped his eyes and handed over the keys without comment. Adjoining rooms, Quinn told Zara as they climbed the stairs. Just knock if you need anything. She smiled at his protectiveness. I'll be fine, but thank you. Sleep eluded her that night. The hotel bed was softer than she was used to after weeks on Quinn's firm mattress, and the sounds of the town muted piano music from the saloon down the street, occasional shouts and laughter. The creaking of the hotel itself kept her on edge. When dawn finally broke, she was already dressed and ready. Quinn looked as if he'd slept no better when he met her for breakfast in the hotel dining room. His eyes were shadowed, his jaw tight with tension. Sheriff's office opens at 8, he said as they ate. We'll go right after breakfast. Zara pushed her eggs around her plate. What if they don't believe me? They will. Quinn covered her hand with his. You're telling the truth. That comes through. Sheriff Donovan was a solid man in his 50s, with graying hair and shrewd eyes that missed nothing. He listened without interruption as Zara recounted the stagecoach attack, the deaths of her fellow passengers, and her own ordeal at the hands of the robbers before they left her for dead in the river. You're a lucky woman, Miss Reynolds, he said when she finished. Not many survive an ambush like that. She wouldn't have if I hadn't found her, Quinn interjected. They meant for her to die in that river, the sheriff nodded. And you say there were 3 men, can you describe them? Zara closed her eyes briefly, forcing herself to recall details she'd been trying to forget. One was tall with a scar across his chin. He seemed to be the leader. Another was heavyset with a beard. The third was younger, maybe 20. He had a missing front tooth. Recognition flashed in the sheriff's eyes. Sounds like the Walsh brothers and their cousin Eddie Harkins. They've been causing trouble up and down the territory for months now. Do you know where they are? Quinn asked. Word is they've been seen around Rock Springs. I've already sent telegrams to the sheriff there. Donovan turned his attention back to Zara. Would you recognize them if you saw them again? She nodded, her stomach twisting at the thought. Yes. Then I may need you to come to Rock Springs if we get them in custody. To make a positive identification. Quinn's hand found hers under the table, squeezing reassuringly. She'll do whatever's needed to see justice done, but until then she'll be staying with me. The sheriff's eyebrows rose slightly at the possessive tone, but he nodded. That's probably for the best. Safer out at your place than here in town if the Walsh brothers get wind that there's a survivor. As they left the sheriff's office, Zara felt oddly hollow. She dreaded giving her statement, but now that it was done, she found herself at a crossroads. The teaching position in Rawlins had surely been filled by now. Her belongings were gone. Her old life in Chicago was a distant memory. What are you thinking? Quinn asked as they walked toward the general store. He'd insisted on buying her some proper clothes and supplies before they headed back to his cabin. That I don't know what happens next, she admitted. I came west to be a teacher. Now I'm a witness to a robbery and murder instead. Quinn stopped walking, turning to face her in the middle of the boardwalk. You're still a teacher, Zara. That hasn't changed. What happened to you is terrible, but it doesn't define who you are. His faith in her brought tears to her eyes. I wish I had your certainty. You will, he promised. One day at a time. The general store was crowded with Saturday shoppers. Quinn steered Zara toward the women's clothing section, then tactfully stepped away to give her privacy as she selected several simple dresses, undergarments, and a warm shawl for the approaching autumn evenings. As he waited by the counter, Quinn overheard two men talking in low voices near the ammunition display, saying one of them stage passengers survived, woman supposedly. That'll put a burr under Tom Walsh's saddle for sure. He don't like leaving loose ends. Sheriff's keeping it quiet who she is. Smart move, if you ask me. Quinn's hand drifted to his revolver, his body tensing as he eyed the men. They didn't appear to be outlaws themselves, just townsfolk exchanging gossip, but their words confirmed his fears. Word was spreading, despite the sheriff's discretion. When Zara joined him at the counter with her selections, he added ammunition for his rifle and revolver to the purchase. Her questioning look was met with a slight shake of his head, not here. Outside, as they loaded their purchases onto the horses, he explained what he'd overheard. "We need to get back to the cabin," he said. "It's safer there than in town where anyone might recognize you." Zara nodded, her face pale but determined. "I knew this might happen. I just didn't think it would be so soon." The ride back was tense, both of them scanning the trail constantly for signs of pursuit or ambush. They reached the cabin as dusk was falling, the familiar sight of its sturdy walls bringing a sense of relief that surprised Zara with its intensity. In just a few short weeks, this place had come to feel like home. "I'll check the perimeter," Quinn said after they'd unsaddled the horses. "Go on inside and get a fire started." Zara did as he asked, her movements automatic as she built up the fire and put on water for coffee. When Quinn returned some time later, his expression was grim. "No signs of anyone following us," he reported, "but that doesn't mean they won't come." "What do we do?" she asked. He removed his hat, running a hand through his hair in a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of his frustration. "We stay alert. I'll ride to the Hollisters tomorrow, let them know to keep an eye out for strangers asking questions. And if the Walsh brothers do come looking for me," Quinn's gaze hardened, "then they'll have to go through me first." That night, without discussion, Zara joined Quinn in his bedroom. They held each other close, finding comfort in proximity as sleep eluded them both. "I'm sorry," she whispered into the darkness. "I've brought danger to your door." Quinn's arm tightened around her. "You've brought a hell of a lot more than that, Zara Reynolds." She shifted to look at him, though she could barely make out his features in the darkness. "What do you mean?" His hand came up to cup her cheek. "I mean that finding you in that river was the best thing that's happened to me in years. Even with all this trouble, I wouldn't change it." Zara's heart swelled at his words. "Nor would I," she admitted. "As terrible as it was, it brought me to you." Their lips found each other in the darkness, the kiss deepening with a hunger that had been building between them for weeks. Quinn's hands were gentle but insistent as they traced the curves of her body through the thin fabric of her nightgown. Zara responded in kind, her fingers mapping the solid planes of his chest and shoulders. When they finally gave themselves to each other fully, it was with a tenderness born of shared hardship and growing love, a healing of sorts for wounds both physical and emotional. Later, as they lay entwined in the aftermath, Quinn pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together." Zara believed him. The next 2 weeks passed in a state of heightened vigilance tempered by deepening intimacy. Quinn rode to neighboring ranches, subtly spreading word to watch for the Walsh brothers while being careful not to reveal Zara's presence at his cabin. He practiced shooting with Zara until she was comfortable handling his spare revolver, insisting she carry it whenever he wasn't with her. At night, they found solace in each other's arms, their lovemaking sometimes urgent with the awareness of danger, sometimes slow and tender with the luxury of time. It was on a crisp autumn morning, as Zara was gathering eggs from the chicken coop, that she heard the approaching riders. 3 of them, coming fast down the trail that led to the cabin, her heart pounding. She slipped the revolver from her pocket and hurried toward the cabin where Quinn was repairing a chair leg. "Riders coming," she said, her voice tight with fear. 3 of them. Quinn was on his feet instantly, reaching for his rifle. "Get inside, stay away from the windows." But Zara stood her ground. "No, I won't hide while you face them alone." He started to argue, then saw the determination in her eyes and nodded once. "Stay behind me then. And if shooting starts, you get inside no matter what." They moved to the front of the cabin, Quinn positioning himself on the porch with his rifle ready, Zara slightly behind him with the revolver steady in her hand. Together they watched as the riders came into view around the bend in the trail. Relief washed over Quinn's face. "It's the sheriff," he said, lowering his rifle slightly but not completely, "and 2 deputies, looks like." Sheriff Donovan raised a hand in greeting as they approached. "Ryder, got news for you and the lady." The 3 lawmen dismounted, tying their horses to the hitching post before climbing the steps to the porch. "Miss Reynolds," the sheriff said, tipping his hat to Zara. "Glad to see you looking well." "What news, Sheriff?" Quinn asked, not bothering with pleasantries. "We got them," Donovan said simply. "The Walsh brothers and Eddie Harkins caught them trying to rob the bank in Rock Springs 3 days ago. Tom Walsh was killed in the attempt. Other 2 are in custody." Zara felt her knees weaken with relief. Quinn's arm came around her waist, supporting her. "You're sure it's them?" she asked. The sheriff nodded. "Match your descriptions exactly," and young Eddie Harkins confessed to the whole thing. Stagecoach robbery included, hoping for leniency. "Will they hang?" Quinn's voice was hard. "Most likely. They've killed at least 7 people that we know of." Donovan's eyes moved to Zara. "I'll need you to come to Rock Springs to make a formal identification, but there's no rush now. They're not going anywhere." "I'll take her whenever she's ready," Quinn said. After the lawman had gone, promising to return in a week to escort them to Rock Springs, Quinn and Zara sat together on the porch swing he'd built the previous summer. "It's over," Zara said, still hardly believing it. "They can't hurt anyone else." Quinn took her hand in his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "What do you want to do now, about Rollins, I mean, the teaching position?" She considered the question. Over the past weeks, she'd thought often about her original plans, wondering if she should still pursue them. But something had changed. She had changed. "I don't think I want to go to Rollins anymore," she said slowly. "Not to stay anyway." Hope flickered in Quinn's eyes. "No," she shook her head. "This place, it feels like home now, and there's a small school about 10 miles from here at the crossing." Mrs. Hollister mentioned they've been without a teacher for months. "That's true," Quinn confirmed. "Most of the ranch hands' children attend when there's someone to teach." "I could do that," Zara said, warming to the idea. "Teach at the crossing. It would mean I could stay here with you." Quinn's face broke into a smile that took her breath away. "Are you saying what I think you're saying, Zara Reynolds?" She smiled back, suddenly shy. "I'm saying I love you, Quincy Ryder, and I'd like to build a life with you if you'll have me." In answer, Quinn pulled her into his arms, his kiss conveying everything words couldn't express. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I've loved you since I pulled you from that river," he confessed. "Maybe even before that, if such a thing is possible, like my heart was waiting for you all along." Tears of happiness sprang to Zara's eyes. "They left me to die," she whispered, "but you carried me into tomorrow, and now all our tomorrows can be together." 1 month later, they stood before the preacher in the small church at the crossing, surrounded by neighbors who had become friends. Zara wore a new dress of cream-colored silk, ordered specially from Denver. Quinn had splurged on a proper suit, looking so handsome it made her heart ache with happiness. As they exchanged their vows, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The terror of the stagecoach robbery, the pain and despair as she clung to that rock in the Sweetwater River, the healing that had taken place both physical and emotional in the shelter of Quinn's cabin and the circle of his arms. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher declared. "You may kiss your bride." Quinn's lips met hers in a kiss that promised a lifetime of tomorrows, each one better than the last. As they turned to face their well-wishers, hand in hand, Zara knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true home at last, not in a place, but in the heart of the man who had saved her in every way a person can be saved. They had both been broken by the past, but together they had rebuilt something stronger, something that would endure through whatever challenges lay ahead. And as Quinn helped her into the wagon that would take them back to their cabin, their home, Zara knew that the river that had nearly claimed her life had instead delivered her to her destiny.